Hey everyone, and welcome back to Transform Academy Ltd, your one-stop shop for all things workplace safety. You know, the kind of stuff that keeps everyone healthy, happy, and most importantly, safe on the job. And today, we're tackling a big one. COSHH. That's the Control of Substances Hazardous to Health Regulations 2002 for those of you who like the full official title. But don't worry, we're going to break it down, make it easy to understand, and even, dare I say, a little bit fun. Because a safe workplace is a happy workplace, and that's what we're all about here. So buckle up, grab your hard hats, and let's get right into it. So, what is COSHH? The Control of Substances. Hazardous to Health, or COSHH, is a set of regulations designed to protect workers from harm caused by exposure to hazardous substances. And we're not just talking about the super scary stuff you see in movies with biohazard symbols. This can include anything from chemicals and dust to fumes, gases, and even biological agents like bacteria or viruses. Think about it. Everyday workplaces can have hidden dangers. A cleaning closet with strong chemicals, a construction site with dust flying everywhere, even a lab working with bacteria cultures. Without proper precautions, exposure to these substances can lead to serious health issues. We're talking skin diseases, respiratory conditions, and even long-term organ damage. Nobody wants that, right? That's why COSHH is so important. It's all about reducing these risks and keeping everyone safe and healthy. It's like having a set of rules for a game, but in this game, the stakes are high. It's about protecting people's well-being, and that's something we can all get behind. Now, let's talk about who's responsible for making sure COSHH is followed. And spoiler alert, it's everyone. But let's start with employers, because they have a big role to play. Under the COSHH Regulations 2002, employers have a legal duty to protect their workforce from hazardous substances. Think of it like being the captain of a ship. You're responsible for the safety of everyone on board. So, what does that actually look like in practice? First and foremost, employers need to assess the risks. That means identifying what hazardous substances are present in the workplace and how they could potentially harm employees. It's like being a detective, looking for clues and figuring out where the dangers might be lurking. Next up, they need to implement controls to minimize those risks. This could involve using things like fume extractors to remove harmful vapors from the air, providing personal protective equipment, PPE, like gloves and masks, or even substituting hazardous substances with safer alternatives. It's all about creating a barrier between the hazard and the employee, like a superhero shielding them from danger. But it's not just about equipment and procedures. It's also about knowledge. Employers need to make sure their employees are properly informed, trained and supervised when handling hazardous substances. Knowledge is power, right? And in this case, it's also safety. And last but not least, emergency procedures. Because even with the best planning, accidents can happen. Employers need to have a plan in place for dealing with emergencies like chemical spills or accidental exposure. It's like having a fire drill, but for hazardous substances. Now, I know what you're thinking. This all sounds like a lot of responsibility for employers, and you're right, it is. But here's the thing. COSHH isn't just about what employers need to do. Employees have a crucial role to play too. It's a team effort, folks. Think of it like this. Imagine you're on a sports team. The coach sets the strategy, provides the equipment and trains the players. But when it's game time, it's up to the players to execute the plan and play safely. So, what does that look like in the workplace? First and foremost, employees need to follow the safety procedures and training provided by their employer. This means using equipment properly, handling substances with care, and reporting any concerns or incidents immediately. It's like following the rules of the road. Everyone benefits when we all stay in our lanes and drive safely. And speaking of safety, let's talk about PPE. Personal protective equipment is like a suit of armor, protecting employees from head to toe, but it only works if it's used correctly. Employees need to make sure they're wearing the right PPE for the job, that it fits properly, and that it's in good working order. And if something doesn't feel right, if they have any doubts or concerns, they need to speak up. Remember, communication is key in any relationship, and that includes the one between employer and employee. What's new in COSHH regulations? Now let's talk about updates, because just like technology, safety regulations are constantly evolving to keep up with the times. The COSHH Regulations 2002 are like a classic car. They've got a solid foundation, but they need a little tune-up every now and then to keep them running smoothly. So what's new in the world of COSHH? Well, one of the biggest changes is an increased focus on emerging risks, particularly biological agents. The COVID-19 pandemic really threw a wrench in everyone's plans, and it highlighted the importance of being prepared for unexpected health threats in the workplace. COSHH is now being used to address a wider range of workplace health risks, including those related to pandemics. It's like adding a new chapter to the rulebook, making sure we're ready for whatever challenges come our way. Another big change is the move towards online reporting and record keeping. Gone are the days of dusty files and paper trails. Employers are now encouraged to use digital tools to streamline their risk assessments, safety data sheets, and other important documents. It's like upgrading from a rotary phone to a smartphone. Everything is faster, more efficient, and easier to access. But it's not all about technology and regulations. There's also a growing awareness of the importance of mental health in the workplace, especially for employees who work with hazardous substances. The stress and anxiety of handling dangerous materials can take a toll on anyone's well-being. Employers are now being encouraged to provide support for their employees' mental health, alongside physical safety measures. It's all about creating a holistic approach to workplace well-being. Practical tips for COSHH compliance. All right, let's wrap things up with some practical tips for COSHH compliance. Because at the end of the day, it's all about putting these regulations into practice and creating a safer workplace for everyone. Think of these tips as your COSHH toolkit. The essential tools you need to get the job done right. Tip number 1, review your COSHH assessments regularly. And I don't just mean once a year, dust it off and stick it back on the shelf. Make it a habit to review your assessments whenever you introduce new substances, change processes, or have a near miss. It's like checking the batteries in your smoke detector, better to be safe than sorry. Tip number 2, label everything clearly and store it safely. Imagine walking into a kitchen where all the spices are in unmarked jars. Chaos, right? The same goes for hazardous substances. Make sure everything is clearly labelled with its name, hazards and precautions, and store them in a designated area away from incompatible substances and potential sources of ignition. Organisation is key. Tip number 3, provide regular training for your staff. Remember what we talked about earlier? Knowledge is power. Make sure your employees are up to date on the latest COSHH regulations, safety procedures, and emergency protocols. And don't just make it a one-time thing, offer refresher courses and toolbox talks to keep safety top of mind. It's like going to the gym. You've got to stay consistent to see results. And finally, tip number 4, conduct periodic health surveillance for employees who are exposed to hazardous substances. This could involve things like lung function tests, skin checks or blood tests, depending on the specific hazards. It's like getting regular checkups at the doctor. It's all about early detection and prevention. Conclusion. So, there you have it. COSHH in a nutshell. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the basics of COSHH regulations to practical tips for compliance. But the most important thing to remember is that workplace safety is everyone's responsibility. It's about looking out for ourselves and each other, and creating a culture of safety where everyone feels empowered to speak up and report hazards. Because at the end of the day, we all want to go home safe and sound to our families and loved ones, and that's what COSHH is all about, protecting what matters most. And that's it for today's episode of Transform Academy Ltd. I hope you found it helpful, informative, and maybe even a little bit entertaining. Remember, a safe workplace is a happy workplace, and a happy workplace is a productive workplace. So let's all do our part to keep each other safe and healthy. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a big thumbs up, subscribe to our channel for more workplace safety tips, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an episode. And as always, stay safe out there, my friends.